The Diary of an African Husband. Episode 4. The Silent Treatment. It was on the fourth day of silence that I realized just how much noise my wife's presence added to my life. Silence. A strange thing, isn't it? You never notice it when you're busy, when life is bustling around you. But when silence takes over, it grows into a heavy, living thing, sitting on your chest, demanding your attention. That's exactly how it felt in our home these past few days. It all started with something so small that I barely noticed it. Dinner was set on the table as usual, egusi soup, my favorite. I came in late that night, exhausted from work, and barely glanced at her as I sat down. She brought my plate to me as she always did, but this time there was something in her eyes. "We need to talk," she said softly. I was scrolling through my phone, half reading a message in one of my WhatsApp groups. Without looking up, I responded, "Can it wait? I've had a long day." She didn't say anything. She just walked away. That should have been my warning, but I ignored it. I ate my meal in peace, oblivious to the storm I had just unleashed. The next morning I noticed the change. She woke up before me, as usual, and was already in the kitchen by the time I came out of the bedroom. Normally, she would greet me with a warm smile and a playful jab about how late I'd slept. But this time there was nothing. "Good morning," I said, testing the waters. "Morning," she replied, her tone flat, almost robotic. I let it go, assuming she was just tired. But as the day went on, her silence became more deliberate. Every question I asked was met with one-word answers. Every attempt to engage her was brushed off with a nod or a shake of her head. By the second day, I was starting to feel the weight of it. "Are you okay?" I asked as she folded clothes in the living room. "I'm fine," she said, not looking up from her work. Her voice was calm, but it lacked the warmth I was used to. It was like she had shut a door between us, and I had no idea how to open it. By the third day, I was growing desperate. I came home early from work, determined to figure out what was going on. I found her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a precision that looked almost angry. "Can we talk?" I asked, leaning against the counter. She didn't look up. "I'm busy." "Busy doing what?" "Ignoring me." Her knife paused mid-chop, and for a moment, I thought she would finally let loose and tell me what was wrong. But instead, she simply picked up the bowl of chopped vegetables and walked away. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, the silence between us felt like a chasm. I turned to face her, hoping she was still awake. "Whatever it is, I'm sorry," I said quietly. For a long time she didn't respond. Then, just when I thought she had fallen asleep, she spoke. "You don't listen to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her words hit me like a slap. "What do you mean? Do you remember the night I said I needed to talk to you?" I nodded, though I knew she couldn't see me in the dark. "You didn't even ask what it was about," she continued. "You brushed me off like what I had to say didn't matter." I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I was tired, distracted, stressed from work. But deep down I knew she was right. "I'm sorry," I said again, my voice breaking. "I didn't mean to make you feel like that." She didn't respond. She simply turned her back to me, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had gotten to this point. The fourth day was the hardest. By now, the kids had started to notice the tension in the house. Our youngest, Toby, asked me, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy talking to you?" How do you explain something like that to a 5-year-old? "She's just busy, my boy," I said, ruffling his hair. "Mommy will be fine." But I wasn't sure I believed my own words. That evening, I came home with flowers. A big, bright bouquet of her favorite sunflowers. I thought maybe a small gesture could break the ice, but when I handed them to her, she took them with a polite, "Thank you," and placed them on the counter without another word. I stood there, watching her arrange the flowers in a vase, and I realized that this wasn't something I could fix with gifts or apologies. I needed to listen, to really listen. After dinner, I sat her down in the living room. The kids were in bed, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan. "I know I've been a terrible listener," I began. "And I know I've hurt you by not paying attention to what's important to you. But I'm here now. I'm ready to listen. Please talk to me." For a long time, she didn't say anything. She just stared at the vase of sunflowers on the table, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Then finally she spoke. "It's not just about that night," she said. "It's everything. I feel like I'm invisible to you sometimes. Like my thoughts, my feelings don't matter." Her words cut deeper than any argument we had ever had. I wanted to protest, to tell her that she was wrong, that she was the most important person in my life. But I realized that now wasn't the time for words. It was the time for action. "I hear you," I said. And I promised to do better. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of warmth in her eyes. Reflections from the diary. That night, as I wrote in my journal, I couldn't help but think about how easy it is to take the people we love for granted. We get so caught up in our own lives, our own problems, that we forget to pay attention to the small things, the things that really matter. My wife's silence wasn't just a punishment, it was a lesson. A reminder that communication isn't just about talking. It's about listening, understanding, and making the other person feel seen and heard. And as I closed my journal, I made a promise to myself. I would never let her feel invisible again.